everybody, welcome to another episode of Pitch Us. We have an exciting entrepreneur here today. My name's Tim Cooley, the author of the Pitch Deck book and also the executive director for Park City Angels. Joined with us is Jeff Erickson. Jeff, why don't you do an introduction?
Yeah, Jeff Erickson with Forecaster. We do financial modeling for early stage startups, and I'm also an angel investor.
Awesome. And then our guest today is Rich Malloy. Welcome and give us a brief introduction.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me, Tim and Jeff. I appreciate it. My name is Rich Malloy. I'm a managing partner at Springtime Ventures. We're a seed stage fund based in Colorado, but we invest across the country. And we invest in healthcare, fintech and logistics, and marketplace businesses. And so happy to be here today. Also am the host and producer of a podcast called the VC Minute. Quick advice to help startup founders fundraise better.
Awesome. I love it. Thanks for being here. So the real goal of this podcast is to kind of open the curtain on what happens after a person pitches. A lot of us talk about the investment, and so we kind of want to expose that. And so, Nick, why don't you go ahead and share your screen and then pitch us whenever you're ready.
All right, perfect. Thank you all for having me here. I'm really excited to pitch Zabble, what we're working on. So Zabble's mission is to enable organizations to achieve zero waste by delivering real-time actionable insights using AI. I'm Nick Palachandran, the founder and CEO of Zabble. So let me tell you how big of a problem waste is. So if you look at the annual landfill waste that is generated in the US, 40% of that is contributed by commercial buildings. So places like the schools, hospitals, movie theaters, all of the exciting stuff that we spend outside of home, office buildings. And so just looking at the numbers, overall, from our research, we have found that the commercial buildings spend in excess every single year. They spend $9 billion in getting that waste hauled away. And they spend a lot of time in servicing the containers and have the waste move around inside the buildings. And they spend 202 million hours of excess time that can be saved. And all of this contributes to that 60 million tons of waste that is being generated by these commercial buildings that could be recovered and sent to landfills, sent away from landfills into recycling and composting facilities, and maybe even reduced. So what are the tools do they have right now in helping them solve their problems that they have? So they hire consultants who come in and do these one-time waste audits to give them a sense for how the waste is generated, how much waste is produced. All of this is tracked in spreadsheets, and it's really time-consuming and cumbersome to go through this exercise for each building. You have sensors now that are installed in dumpsters outside these buildings and the loading docks, but they only capture information outside the buildings. They don't really tell these buildings what the source of that improper disposal is. So people tossing things in the wrong bins and the implications of that, which actually leads to that $9 billion in excess cost. And then finally, you have these point-in-time sort of point softwares, like bill pay softwares that allow these buildings to pay off their bills, their hauling bills, but don't really give them insights on how they can save on the logistics of reducing the frequency of pickups, spotting inconsistencies and billing errors and such. So this is sort of the challenges that these buildings have. Currently, there's these tailwinds propelled by the environmental impact of waste that's calling for new technology solutions. So China has stopped importing the recyclable materials from the US, so the costs of recycling has gone up, cost of hauling has gone up. Obviously, with energy prices, again, those numbers are going up even further. There's new advances in technology, AI especially, that is disrupting this industry. The federal government just end of last year has passed the infrastructure bill, and $350 million is specifically earmarked for recycling technology and policy updates, which is really exciting. And we're the recipients of one of those awards already. And then finally, major companies, the Fortune 500, are already establishing and declaring sustainability goals, and waste is one of the top things. The global waste management software market is $19 billion and growing at 10% year on year. So this is what we have come up with, an end-to-end waste management and workflow automation platform. So digitize your bins entirely inside the building to outside the building. So all your inventory is digitized, your equipment, your workflows even is digitized. And then basically we bring in all the vendors, all the solutions together on one platform, so they can see all the data on how the waste is moving from point to point inside the building and how it's being hauled away. And we have our own patented waste monitoring system and methodology that we are deploying in these large scale buildings. And then finally, we've created this enterprise scale application that can be deployed in any industry, whether it's healthcare, universities, office buildings, in less than a week across hundreds of buildings. So at the core of it is our two products, essentially Invoice Analytics, that allows the clients to upload their invoices. Our AI digitizes those invoices and gives them these recommendations to right-size their containers and spot billing inconsistencies to help them save money. And mobile tagging is a mobile device where they can just pull out their phones, snap a photo of the bin, and the AI tells you how full the bin is automatically and suggests contaminants, things that shouldn't be disposed of in that bin using object detection and classification. And then basically brings together everyone in the organization on one single platform with which they can run behavioral campaigns and help their occupants and staff. So with our we've been working with UC San Francisco for a couple of years, and we've been able to help them save $300,000 annually in the last year. We've been able to help them kind of resolve some key incidents related to waste management, especially when e-waste and hazardous waste issues were found. And these happen constantly. And they saved 130 hours recurring on a monthly basis on analytics and communication. So we're really excited and proud with that. We've also worked with other hospital systems where we've helped them save a lot of time and money and reduce waste from going to landfills on a yearly basis. So we've been growing 1 to 3x in terms of the usage of our platform. And we can talk about this later, but 12,000 tons is what we've already captured, 3 times what we did in 2021 already using our platform in 2022. So how big is the market? So based on what we're charging, about $600 per building per year right now. So that 360 buildings that we're in right now generates $220,000 in revenue, ARR. But we think we can get to about $2,000 a year in average in some of these buildings. So we think it's a $11.98 billion market. And our main sort of focus is hospitals, universities, office buildings, and retail and lodging. This is what we're going after in phase 1. And then that's a $1.2 billion market. And then sort of slicing and dicing it further, we're specifically focusing right now on healthcare, the top 40 health systems, university hospitals and universities, because we already have clients there, like UCSF, a recycling partnership that does a lot of outreach on behalf of some of these organizations. And within that, we are focusing on how sort of the tipping fees is in terms of the, how expensive it is to dispose of waste in the different states. So if you look at that map over there, we're targeting the West Coast and the Northeast, where it's really expensive to get rid of waste. So that's our strategy. So this is the potential impact. So we are able to make a significant number of, productivity savings in terms of hours by efficiently sort of helping these organizations manage their waste. And we can help them save $1 billion in hauling cost savings. This is literally just the phase 1 space that we are focusing on right now, and a huge impact in terms of sending less waste to landfills. And so the team, it's founded by me. I've had a lot of experience in startups before. If you ever used a Beats headphone, I'm the original inventor of the noise cancellation algorithm in those headphones. And I've worked in many other startups that have become unicorns or have raised enormous amounts of funding. So I really have a lot of experience with early stage companies. I have Steve, who's seen Indeed scale from 10 employees to 10,000. So he's really been there in those early stages. To get more sales and penetrate markets. And then Kelly is a leader from the nonprofit world. She's an award-winning data scientist who really helps us out with trying to figure out how to get into these markets with our solutions. We have a great set of advisors. Kim is from AWS. She's a senior manager there. She helps me out. Erica is a former CEO of Comfy. A bunch of other advisors, including a professor at New York University who specializes in waste specifically. So we have weekly conversations. They really help me out. So we're seeking $750K right now. Our goal is to achieve product market fit, which is, in our minds, 15 customers paying us $75,000 annually at which point in 12 months, we will raise the next round, which would be a Series A. The goal is, again, to validate our sales model, to get them really shorter. So $75,000 within 6 months from having that first conversation to closing the deal. That's what we're looking at. And there's a huge opportunity with the EPA. So we just got a grant from the EPA last year, which just ended. So we received $100,000. Now we're eligible for another $400,000. And if we bring in outside capital, the EPA is going to match us another $100,000. There's tons of grant money coming in from the federal government, and I think we're in a great spot. In terms of exit opportunities, I've had numerous conversations with some of these companies, and including private equity. So there's a lot of momentum in this sort of middle market M&A. 7x seems to be like a multiple that keeps getting thrown out. And so I think if we hit that 15 to 20 million sort of ARR, we'll be in a great space to get acquired by one of these companies who doesn't have a presence in this very niche generator space with the IP that we have. And there's an enormous sort of momentum with sustainability-focused SPAC IPOs that are also happening, and Rubicon is one of them that are going IPO. So that's sort of, I think, a great opportunity for us, and would love to have learn more about what you think we could do in this space and how we could get to the next level. So thank you again for the opportunity, and looking forward to speaking with you.
Awesome, Nick. Thank you so much. So like what we like to do is start with things that we really liked about the presentation. So Rich, why don't you tell us what did you really like about what you saw?
I think that you showed so actually the biggest thing right now is that you have paying customers, and that's fantastic. And so and that that it sounds like you had hinted at it, but it sounds like you've got more capacity, or you could be charging more to your customers. Instead of $600 a month, you think you could go up to $2,000 or $3,000 a month, or sorry, not a month, per building. So I love that you have revenue and that you're already out there with some customers. So that's fantastic. I think also you talked about, the magnitude of the problem as well, of the waste and the impact that has, and the hours, and how that problem is compounding from a global scale. And then it's great to have founder with prior experience, and the work that you've been doing on that front as well. Yeah. And also last thing I'm looking down at my notes is that, I'm a big fan of non-dilutive funding. And so I love that you won an SBIR award, and that you're looking to go win the phase 2 after that. So that's fantastic. Congratulations on that.
Yeah. Let me echo with that. So for people listening, if you guys can get outside funding, that kind of validates what you're working on, it's a huge indicator for investors like us that somebody wants this to exist. So keep that in the mind. Jeff, what else did you like about the presentation?
Yeah, Nick, you presented very well, and I felt like it was very professionally done. We see a lot of pitches here, and I thought this was well done. One thing that seemed that, I'll go on what I liked first. Like Rich said, I like that you had revenue right now. And I didn't see the full projections. You hinted at it, but I see big opportunity. And I liked your team. I thought, I liked your background. I thought was super impressive. And then I guess I would have liked to learn a little bit more about your 2 other founders or co-founders there, if they are co-founders, and maybe even the makeup, but probably drill into, who owns the equity. But, overall, I thought you did a great job on your presentation. Getting to product market fit, and you detailed out kind of what you're doing, how much you're looking for, and what, that next inflection point is, 15 customers. So, I thought it was well thought out and well played.
Yeah, I agree. Great job. As far as an initial pitch, you sound like you've done this before. Very confident, which is really good. I actually really like the way, and we'll get to some of the things that you can fix, but the way that you introduced the problem, where you did a problem, you showed this current solutions, and then you started to talk about how the problems of those solutions existed in the world, and then maybe you were going to be able to change that. It's a beautiful way of kind of like doing problem, solution, problem at the very beginning. I kind of would have, we'll talk about some feedback in a little bit, but yeah, overall, I'm going to echo with everybody. Your team sounds amazing. I'd love to learn a little bit more about them, but let's get into some of the areas where we think we can help. And Rich, why don't you kick us off?
Okay. So, as I always preface for founders as I'm providing feedback, is that, this is just one perspective and we're wrong all the time and everybody has differences of opinion. So, take it all with a grain of salt for whatever it's worth. So sorry, I should have muted my phone before this. One of the things I was struggling with very early on was why do the commercial folks care, right? Is this are there tax incentives? Is this a government mandate? Is it have they made a pledge? Are they going to stick to that pledge when times get hard? So like, why do they care? And so I am at nature an optimist, but I always put on my pessimist and critical hat, especially when it comes to motivations and corporate motivations. So that was one thing didn't get anything about why the commercial space cares. And even in the pitch to that you're saving time and money falls flat for me until you have those results, until you showed some of those results. And I think that can tie back to the why they care. The haul, and so then the two products, right? The hauling cost and the mobile tagging, these would be follow-up questions that I would dig in on, right? And so the hauling cost seems to me to be a one-time analysis, like, hey, here's how you can change your bin size and your frequency and all of those things, and that'll cut your cost by 30%. Sweet, thanks. See you never, right? Maybe talk to you in 5 years because we changed it and we saved money, and so now I don't have to pay you for anything again. And then the mobile tagging, I wasn't tracking, right? I didn't get it because can't I just open a bin and look and see how full it is? Do I need to take a picture of it and have somebody tell or to, so how does that benefit and save me time? Because then I still have to walk around to it and take a picture of it and then say, oh, somebody needs to come and empty this. So those two pieces seem to be what you're building your business on, but these would just be follow-up questions, right? And I'm sure you've got great answers for them, Nick, right? But that left me wondering, but also left me wondering, like, why are those the problems to solve? So my last two things here is, would love to hear your origin story for this business, to tie it in and make it personal. On your last slide, you had that you're a part of the Northern California Recycling Commission and a zero waste advisor. Whoa, where was that, dude? That's amazing. Like, if those are your credentials, you should be talking about those. That's so cool. And why is this so personal for you, right? Building a startup is so hard, as you know, right? And so I want to know that I'm backing somebody that is in this for, that is in this for the long haul, is in this through the ups and the downs. Is it going to see this through? And how you do that is you sell that vision about why you have to do this and why there's nobody else on earth that can do this but you. And then that ties into my last piece of feedback, is I never ever want to hear about exits from a seed stage startup. This might just be a Rich thing, but to me, we are misaligned in incentives, right? So even if you're talking about IPO, what I want to hear about is your big 5-year or 10-year vision, right? That here's how we're going to solve this problem, and here's the amount of carbon we're going to move and remove, and sell me on the big vision about this world that you create. Mike Maples from Floodgate once said on a podcast that great founders are like time travelers. They come from the future to tell us what the world is like with their product at full scale. That's what I want to hear about. I don't want to hear about how you're exiting the business. Yeah, I make money when you exit, but I only make money if you exit big. And the only way that I do that is if I know that you are the person to do it, that is deeply motivated to do it, and that you're going to see this through to build your vision. And if your vision is to just sell it, the first private equity company that comes along and says, here's $100 million, probably going to jump at that. And that's not going to return the fund for me. So And with that, that's my
Great
feedback.
perspective.
But honestly, Nick, look,
Yeah.
you did a great job, and you want to have people asking you questions, and so it's you don't have to cover everything, right? But you really did a fantastic job.
All right, Jeff, you're up.
And that's why we have Rich on here. That was a great
Yeah,
perspective
totally.
from a venture capital firm. My perspective is a little bit different because it's from an angel investor. And if you sold in 2 years at 100 million, I probably wouldn't mind as much as Rich.
That's the difference, right, between VCs and angels.
Because I'm not looking to return my fund, right? It's like, so it depends on who you're pitching. But it's a great point to know your audience and who you're pitching to. Anyways, great points. First off, the one thing I noticed on your first slide was the black and the purple. It was hard to read at times. And so that was one thing. Maybe have a graphic designer kind of look at your deck. There were a couple slides also that were pretty cluttered. Like there's a lot on there that if you could simplify it, it got a little distracting a couple times. When there's just a ton of information. I was trying to read through it all. So that was one thing I noticed. To Rich's point about the two products, I wasn't 100% clear on, is there a change of behavior when somebody has to go out and take a picture of the bins? Was that automated? Again, it goes into what Rich was saying about, I'm going to have a couple of follow-up questions about that. That wasn't completely clear to me. So maybe working on providing some clarity. My concern there, and maybe you have good answers for this, is this going to require a change of behavior for the company? Do I have to now have somebody go out and take pictures or do this? And so maybe just addressing that would be helpful. Again, I like the fact that you've got your 5 paying clients. And I saw the problem up front. There was the environmental problem, and I like that you're hitting that, the sustainability angle. I didn't understand the real benefit to the companies until you kind of brought up that you saved $300,000 last year for was it the University of San Francisco? And all of a sudden it's like, okay, that's good. That probably would have been helpful to know up front that is a huge motivation potentially for them. And I liked how you segmented it out and you say, hey, we're going to go after the hospitals and the universities. What I didn't see in there was a competitor slide. I wasn't sure who else is out there doing this and what the competitive landscape looks like. I did get the impression that there was a lot of space out there and that you probably weren't bumping into competition, but it did make me wonder who else is out there doing this. Who are you going to run into? Are there some of these big companies that you mentioned that could come in here and do this equally as well or better? And so a competitive landscape would probably be helpful. And then finally, as you get into the revenue, you hinted at it, and it was, hey, we're going to get to, with the $750,000, we're going to get to 1.5 million in ARR. I wanted to see how, it's 15 more, or a total of 15 clients. What does that look like? I wanted to see that, and then beyond, what happens. So maybe some of your revenue projections going out and what that looks like. Because like I said, you hinted at it, but I don't think it was super clear in terms of the picture of what this looks like. I did get a little bit on, that, hey, once you've got 15 million in ARR, then you become like Rich said, a good, potential acquisition target. As opposed to saying and I don't think you did this to say, our exit strategy is to get acquired by one of these, but one way you could address that is, here's some recent activity in this space where this company acquired this company. And so there is some appetite out there if that's a pathway. So that might be one way to address the acquisition. Because honestly, I kind of, the opposite of Rich, I was like, okay with you talking about an exit and saying, Okay. At 15 million ARR, how soon do we get there was my question.
Yeah, great feedback. So additionally in this, there's a couple of things that I would have loved to have seen. You talked about selling to hospitals, and I think you could have gotten to that at the beginning. So hospitals have these problems with waste. And I think that would have really helped us clarify what the solutions were going to be. And so I really did like the beginning, but carbon emissions is a whole separate topic. It's a feel good kind of a deal. And I want to see direct problems. I don't know where your video went, so I'm just going to keep going. But the other things that I want to say is, okay, okay, good. I thought something happened, but we can fix it in post. But anyway, what I would have loved to have seen is you allude to the hospitals having this certain problem at the very beginning. I also would have loved to know your background that got you into this space. Your team is amazing. You guys have some good things, but saying like, I'm part of this coalition. Here's something that I saw. Here, problems have these issues, or hospitals have these issues, would have really helped clarify the solution. I'm calling it the green slide. It's like the slide right after you went through all your problem statements. Was very wordy, and I wanted to read it, but I wasn't sure which direction to read to stay with you. So you went like kind of like sideways and down, and I was like, oh, I'm reading, but I'm not hearing him at the same time. And that's what happens with the cluttered slide. I don't know how to follow. And so the next slide after that, you started telling us about the solution that you had, but I had nothing to connect it to. I wish it would have been like one clear picture of the analysis thing and what it does. Another slide could have been the mobile app, what it does, why it's so unique, and then whatever your other solutions are as they relate to these problems to the hospitals would have been super helpful. Something that happened is it was okayly clear on how you guys charge, but you never gave us like a financial model that says how much money you're making today. It wasn't like we have 5 companies paying at $600 a month, and then this is the total dollar amount. That would have been really helpful. You just told it to us, and I was like, where on the slide is this? And so I was like trying to search for that on the slide while you're telling me about it. So I think adding that to it very simply, you have the data. I know you do. It's just organizing it in a way. Like Jeff mentioned, the competition would have been really helpful. I've actually seen a couple products like this in this space. So I would like to know what's really different about this one and the other ones that I've seen. And then what you can do is, because your initial conversation is about hospitals, is later in the presentation, talk about the opportunity for growth. So you already have universities, and maybe you're kind of doing like a land and expand model where you go into like the University of Utah, own their hospital system, and then you branch out to the rest of the school. That would have been a really nice way for us to like, it was really clear that your selling path, but also to add to the revenue models. And then there was something else that I was thinking about, but those are kind of like the big ones that I can remember right now. Oh, here's a big one. You said that there's 40 healthcare systems, but your goal is to get 20 clients total. I don't know if those are the same numbers, but you just told me you're trying to get 50% of your market. Unless it's 20 buildings, I don't know what 20 customers means. And as it relates to, you have 5, you're trying to get to 20, but there's only 40 out there. Does that make sense? I'm sure those numbers aren't connected, but the way that you presented it, they might be. So anyway, that's my feedback on that. Anybody else got any other feedback?
Just a curious point on that. Nick, I would love to hear your thoughts on that, because the number of clients, I got the impression that the 15 weren't the out of the 40 big massive clients, but maybe correct us. What is that? Because that's not going to get you to, your ultimate revenue goals. Awesome. A good point for our listeners that, if you're presenting to a venture capital firm, they do need to look at this as, will this investment return my fund? And that's the filter. And that's not going to be the filter necessarily for your angel investors, But when you start presenting to VCs, that's what you're up against. Are you going to be able to return their fund? So if they've got $100 million fund, you better, their investment better produce $100 million. So anyways, good piece of advice. I think it was really beneficial to have that brought out.
Yeah, so let's get down to it. So the question is, based off of what we heard today, not the discussion afterwards, not the questions or feedback, Rich, would you take this company to due diligence?
No.
Or want to learn more about it?
No, I wouldn't. So first is that this is outside of our focus areas for springtime. But even before that, Fund One was a generalist SaaS firm. And, we looked at a number of sustainability related startups and ultimately decided to pass on all of them. And I think that it was just not the business for us. And Tim, you mentioned this before about how there's been a lot of companies that you've seen a lot of pitches around this. And for the companies that we've seen that have been working on sustainability goals for corporations, the timing just wasn't right. And most of them, or probably all of them, aren't around now. But the answers to your questions were good. But if you're asking me just purely off of the pitch, we would say, thank you for your time, but not a fit for us.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, I was thinking I would love to learn more, or I would love to see Nick. I love you as a founder. It would be interesting to see if there's a way we could back you. Based on the presentation, there were some missing elements. I think the big one for me was I just didn't get a clear feeling for how you're going to get to these milestones. So I don't think it was quite to due diligence for me. It was, you've got a little bit more to figure out and present to me from your presentation. Even with the backstory of how you got involved and all that, I don't think that would do it for me. I think it was more, I want to see how you're going to actually get to, that 1.5 million in ARR and the 15 million. And I just need a little bit more confidence that that's going to happen, I guess.
Yeah, so I would give the same feedback. There's a company in Utah called Recyclops. I saw them start when they were just an idea. They're doing very well right now, very similar in concept, maybe not the direct path that you guys are going in, but look at them as a competitor. But man, it's such a struggle with this space, like Rich mentioned. And so because I've seen this before, I would have to say no on the due diligence, but I would love to follow you and maybe come at the next round and maybe not this one, if that makes sense. And that's just for our group.
Category fatigue is hard, and would love to, would love to hear from you guys about what you think about overcoming category fatigue. We've seen this before. How does a founder like Nick, overcome that?
Yeah, good question. I mean, again, part of that goes back to the competitor slide and that competitive analysis. Where do we fit? If it's a crowded marketplace, I want to know what makes you stand out from the competitors. I didn't necessarily get that because I'm not seeing a ton of overlap in deals that I've seen. But when I have seen that, and it's a category where I've seen a lot of companies in this, company really has to stand out from its competitors, and there's got to be that true competitive advantage that sets you apart from everybody else in the field.
Yeah, I would say usually it's the sales team. Because if you can outsell someone, it doesn't really matter. And, we've seen that in Utah play out over and over again. Like people just outcall people. And I think, Nick, that's something you mentioned. If you can outcall people and your relationship to the industry is actually very hard to do. So maybe those are two ways to answer your question.
Yeah. No, great suggestions. I think I'd add on to that around the founder makes a big difference. And so, Nick, your story there, like that personal story, resonates really deeply. Founder makes a huge difference for overcoming category fatigue. Positive unit economics make a big difference. I love outcalling your competitors. That's great. right? Grind that sales process. It's good.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. If you guys are looking for help with your pitch decks, please reach out to pitchus.io. And if you're looking for help on your financials, check out Forecaster and check out Rich's podcast as well.